Hello, everyone. Zakiya Dalila Harris here. I'm going to give it a few seconds, maybe a minute or so, for everyone to join. But thank you so much for joining today. And as you are joining, I'd love to hear where you are tuning in from. I have to say, I've never been to Australia. I'm coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. So feel free to drop where you are in the chat. Hi, Carolyn. All right, just gonna maybe get started in about maybe 20, 30 seconds. Again, I am Zakiya Dalila Harris, author of The Other Black Girl. Hi, Tracy. Sydney. Oh, I have always wanted to visit Australia. I have to say that I grew up loving, I mean, this is maybe very American, but the Mary-Kate and Ashley movie, Our Lips Are Sealed, got me really into Australia. So very jealous of you all. Also very jealous because it is about 95 degrees Fahrenheit here today and has been for a while. So heard you guys are in winter mode. Hello, Jessie. Hi, Susan. Oh, South Wales. Hello. Hi, Andy. Julietta, hello. Thank you so much, Tracy. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'll just introduce myself first. My name is Zakiya Dalila Harris. I am the author of The Other Black Girl, which came out June 1st. I cannot believe it's been already more than a month out. And The Other Black Girl, in a nutshell, without any spoilers, because there are potentially a lot of spoilers, primarily follows Nella Rogers, who is a young editorial assistant who has been the only Black person working at the prestigious Manhattan publishing house, Wagner Books, for the last 2 years. So she is so excited when Hazel, another Black woman, starts working alongside her. And Nella has been, as the only one at the office, Nella has been the one who's handled all the microaggressions, has handled all of those awkward conversations with her out of touch white colleagues. So she really hopes that Hazel will get it. She can talk to her about anything, talk to her about hair, and talk to her about, Black Twitter, all of those things. But of course, where's the story if there is not a twist? And Hazel starts to, I don't know, Hazel starts to be a little strange, we'll just say. I don't want to give too much away, but Nella starts to wonder if Hazel is friend or foe. And also unfolding alongside Nella's story are the stories of Kendra Ray, Diana, and Shawnee, who are all Black women who are also tied to the world of publishing. And all four of these women are bound by one very dark, chilling secret that has implications for Black people all over the world. So that is The Other Black Girl in a nutshell. It is a workplace thriller. It is a horror-tinged suspense novel. It is a lot of things. Get Out meets Devil Wears Prada is kind of what we're saying in the publishing world. And I should add that I worked in book publishing myself for about 2.5, close to 3 years at Penguin Random House in New York City. So a lot of this book, while it is not very much true in a lot of ways, a lot of those experiences and that vibe of the office of working in corporate America as a Black woman who was one of very few Black people in publishing, a lot of that is what I drew on for this book. So that's a little bit about it. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead for now and just tell you a little bit about what inspired me to start writing the book, because it was an actual moment. So I mentioned I worked in publishing for a while, and I was one day washing my hands at the bathroom sink at work. And at this point, I should add, I'd worked in publishing for a while and was not feeling it. I've always wanted to write. That was my first love ever since I was like 5 years old. And so washing my hands in the bathroom sink, tired of publishing in a lot of ways for various reasons. And then this other Black woman comes out of the bathroom stall while I'm washing my hands. And I mentioned I was one of very, very few Black people. I was the only Black woman on my floor. So I looked at her and I was like, where did you come from? Like, so excited, hoping we would have some kind of friendship. She was maybe a new hire. And there was no kind of recognition or no kind of nod that a lot of Black people do, a lot of people of color do with one another when they're the only ones in these situations. And so I'm like trying to catch your eye, there's nothing. And I go back to my desk and I'm like, huh, that was really weird. But I was mostly thinking about me and why I was so weird because, like, I was clearly, and I hadn't really thought about this. I think when you are the only one in a lot of spaces like that, you really suppress it, you push it down. But I realized suddenly that, like, I was craving that kind of diversity at work because I was the only Black woman sitting at these editorial board meetings. I was the one, who felt like I had this responsibility to be the Black editor at work that wasn't there, the Black female editor that wasn't there. And so all of those things had me thinking about my position in publishing. And then I went back to my desk, my cubicle, which Nella and the other Black girl sits at very often, you will see. And I started writing chapter 1 of this book. And it was something that just really swept me up. And after a couple months, I put in my notice and I quit. Started working at a cupcake shop for a little while, but cupcake shops are really hard to work at. The frosting is very, very difficult. And so that didn't last too long. But after that, I got a job teaching part-time creative writing to children. And going back to basics in that way was amazing for me. It stripped away the capitalism. It stripped away the kind of, looking at writing and this kind of like thinking so much about the audience, thinking about how it would sell, but not necessarily thinking as much about like, the inspiration behind it. And so for me, working with children who were learning how to write or learning how to craft stories, that really reminded me of my childhood because that's, like I said, was my dream as a kid to write. So that's a little bit about the origin story of the book. Let's see, just going to check in on these comments. Hi, Anne from Melbourne. Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for joining. And Wendy. All right, so we've got my first question from Lynn Kelly. Did you do any writing while you were at school? That is a very good question. I'm not sure which kind of school you mean, but I think it's yes to all kinds of schools. Let's see, when I went to college, I wanted to major in creative writing, but the school that I went to didn't have it as a major. So I did study English literature, which I felt really helped because I think in high school, we are forced is such a strong word, but we are really told to read certain books, the classics, all those things that are important, of course, Hemingway, Fitzgerald, wonderful authors. But in college, I really got to read authors who inspired me and inspired this book later on. Baldwin was one. Oh my gosh, of course, now I'm blanking out on all of them. Zadie Smith. I read Zadie Smith for the first time in college in an English lit class. Junot Diaz. A lot of more current things, current books that I found really inspiring, really interesting, and also started reading more about race and just things that, again, I hadn't really studied as a young person. And then I did my graduate program at the New School in Manhattan, and I studied nonfiction writing, which also really informed this book because I got waitlisted for fiction in my MFA program and got in for nonfiction. And I was pretty bummed at first because I was like, I've been writing fiction all my life. But nonfiction really forced me to open up a part of myself that I hadn't really thought about before, which is my own background. As a young person, I grew up mostly around white people, like my protagonist, Nella. And that really informed a lot of my perception of myself. It made me decide to partly made me decide to relax my hair as a young person. I straightened my hair for years because I wanted to fit in. A lot of the way I talked as a teenager, once I went to high school and was around Black people again. It was said that I talked like a white girl. And those anxieties of not feeling Black enough as a young person also spill into Nella, my protagonist, because part of why she craves Hazel's contact or friendship with Hazel, the new Black girl at work, is because she's really desperate for it. She didn't have it as a young person, and so a lot of pieces of me you'll see made it into this book. So yes, yes, Lynn, thank you for that question. I was definitely a big writer in school. Let's see. Andy Palmer, any progress to report on the TV adaptation? Yes, actually, just a couple days ago, my co-writer and I, Rashida Jones, we're working on the TV adaptation for Hulu, sent our draft of the pilot in. So we're waiting to hear back about that. We've worked on a few drafts. It's been so much fun. So I should add that right around the time that Sold this book, Sold the Other Black Girl in the US and in the UK, we also sold rights to adapt the book into a TV show. And at first I was like, I had a lot of feelings about it because I didn't write this book with a TV show or movie in mind. And you kind of hear horror stories about writers. I mean, for some reason, Roald Dahl and Willy Wonka comes to mind, but like when adaptations don't quite match up with what you set out to do, and not having that control was a little frightening. But my team, Temple Hill Productions and Tara Duncan, who was at Netflix and is now at Disney, I believe, we're like, we want you to be a part of it. We want you to be as much of a part of it as you want to be. And they were like, this world, this experience, as again, I was Nella in a lot of ways. So we want you to co-write it. And so Rashida Jones and I last year met over Zoom because that's how everyone was meeting in those days and still are. And we started writing an outline and got the outline approved. I learned a lot about the process. There's a lot that goes into this pre-production process. Got the outline approved, and then we started working on the pilot. And it's been a learning experience for sure, but I'm really enjoying it. So stay tuned. Hoping there'll be more to report soon on my TV adaptation. Also, really quickly, it is like we're in the middle of a heat wave in Brooklyn right now, so I'm just turning my fan on. Because I feel myself starting to get very hot. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go through these again. Hi, Saleha. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name, but it is beautiful. Thank you so much for reading. I'm so excited to hear what you think. And let's see, Tracy, yes, definitely unexpected experience led me to writing that bathroom experience. Julietta Henderson, this is a great question. Do you think you would have written this book the same if you hadn't worked in publishing yourself? I don't think so. I think about this all the time. I also think about whether or not I would have written it if I hadn't run into that Black woman in the bathroom, because that was like the thing. And I sometimes have like Back to the Future moments where I'm like, well, the timeline, like how did this affect it and what would have happened? I'm a big what if person, which is actually really how this book came about. But I don't know. I think a version of this book would have happened anyway, because I had been working on another book actually before I started this one. And I just couldn't get it to go, partly because I think I was trying to make it something that it wasn't, and I didn't let it go organically. And this book just poured out of me in 9 months. This is the fastest I've ever written anything. So I do think a version of this book would have existed. I think Nella would have existed, but possibly just in a different space. Thank you for that question. Yes. Oh, Wendy Kendall, you asked the question that I just said. What a great opportunity for a book idea. Do you think you would have even acted if this woman had been friendly when you spoke with her? Yeah, I don't know. And a lot of people don't ask about her necessarily now. And the deal with her was that she was technically an employee where I was, but she worked in contracts or something on the back end. So she had just been moved from upstairs to downstairs temporarily. So I do actually wonder, like, if she's heard this yet and is like, oh, I feel so bad, or like doesn't even remember it. So who knows? One day, maybe that's book two. Let's see. Tracy Anderson, which authors have inspired you? That is also a very good question. I mean, Sula by Toni Morrison really was a big one for me. Friendship spanning time, Black women who are complicated. Yeah, the different perspectives for sure inspired me. Octavia Butler's Kindred, which is briefly a story about a young woman, Black woman, who finds herself being mysteriously pulled into slavery times, and kind of has to piece together exactly when she's being pulled to. And it's like this harrowing look at slavery through the lens of sci-fi, like specifically through time travel. So using genre to kind of get at that very difficult topic of slavery and fictionalizing slavery, which, you know, there's so many books that do that, but Kindred does it in such an interesting way. So that definitely was a big inspiration for me. And then, of course, Passing by Nella Larsen. Nella Larsen's name, of course, is where I got my protagonist's name. And I read that. That is probably the biggest one, because I read that right around the time I had that encounter in the bathroom. And it's a book about two very, very light-skinned women who were able to pass in 1920s Harlem and New York. And while Nella and Hazel, the two Black women in my book who work at Wagner Books, while they are both clearly Black women, you would not mistake them for white people the way that the characters in Passing you would. They still are passing in their own way. They're code switching. They're able to speak and dress and make certain references that help them move throughout the world of Wagner Books. So even though they appear again as Black women, I still think that kind of conforming and assimilating into these kind of spaces is another form of passing. So Passing was for sure a really big one. And then also just like the social tension and the horror and just like subtext was also a big influence on me. Let's see. Thank you for that question. Lynn, Kelly, let's see. Do you get time to read other novels? And if so, what writers do you like to read? TV shows would be amazing. Oh, yeah, Lynn, it's hard. It's hard. I'm actually going on vacation tomorrow, and like have been staring. You can't see, there's this bookcase behind me, but there's also this bookcase in front of me that you can't see that is just towering with books. I will say, actually, I'm bringing this one with me, Survive the Night by Riley Sager, which I started. It's so good. It's so good. It's a thriller. And then 7 Days in June by Tia Williams is another one that I'm excited to read. In terms of recently read, I'm just finishing Leave the World Behind by Rumen Alam, which is so frightening and so good. It's so, so good. Really enjoying that. In terms of who inspired me, I mean, definitely Baldwin, in terms of just like the ways in which he talks about race. I find myself often returning to his words now. I know for me, when I first discovered him, I was kind of going through my own racial awakening, if you will, of realizing, you know, despite having grown up around white people for most of my life, despite being able to talk the talk and like speaking a certain way, yeah, I could still, I'm a Black woman. I'm moving through America as a Black woman. And a lot of things can't change whether or not a police officer does something to me or someone else does something to me. And so that kind of awareness and Notes of a Native Son by James Baldwin is something that really rubbed off on me and I think about often. Definitely an inspiration. Yes, Kindred should be on your to be read shelf. Tracy, I hope you love it. Let's see. Sharon Marshall. Hello. Hi, Zakiya. I'm really looking forward to reading your book now that I have heard you speak about it. Do you have ideas for next book series? Oh, that's a good question. I have a notes app on my phone and a chalkboard wall in the office, and I have just been putting little thoughts on it, things thinking about, what the next book's going to be because I feel like writing a second book is like can be scarier than writing a first book. Of course, as I'm sitting on the other side of it, I'm sure when book three comes, I'll say the same thing about book three being scarier. But there is definitely going to be another book. Right now, I'm focusing mostly on a TV show because that's a lot of new stuff that I'm like injecting into my brain. Oh, and speaking of which, TV shows, let me go back really quick. Search Party, I binge watched over the last like few months. So good. It's on HBO Max here. I'm not sure about in Australia. South Side, which is a comedy on Comedy Central. It's very good, set in Chicago. And then I just started watching The Morning Show, which is so good. I was a little doubtful at first, I'm not going to lie, but it's very entertaining. But anyway, back to your question, Sharon, sorry. Yeah, so I'm not sure about a sequel. It's not crossed my mind. Once you read the book, once you read The Other Black Girl, you will see at the end there's a lot left open, I will say. So maybe, but also I'm kind of keeping all my options open right now. Awesome. Amy Lee Peteriat, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Yes, currently reading Passing, A Wonderful Gift from My Mom. Oh, yes. I love book gifts from mom. Let's see. Bianca Kohler. Okay, despite boycotting girl books, I'll make an exception for your novel as it sounds compelling. Also, you sound like a lovely person I enjoyed listening to. Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, I will say, I think that's fair. This book has girl in the title. It does follow a 26-year-old woman. But it goes beyond that, I think. I mean, I'm biased. Like, so see for yourself and let me know. I hope you really enjoy it. But it really does cover, The Other Black Girl covers being a millennial in New York trying to make ends meet. But it's also about race, workplace politics, friendship, female friendship, and selling out versus code switching, all of these things that I think can be fun to talk about. And I especially recommend co-reading it or buddy reading it with a friend if you want to. So thank you for tuning in. Let's see. There was another question. Oh, Andy, yes, I loved Leave the World Behind. Well, I still have about 20 pages. I'll probably read it after I leave this call or this interview. Okay, let's see. There was another question. Oh, are there any particular actors you'd like to see playing the characters from Tracy? I am not a big actor person. I love TV and I love movies, but like I'm so bad with names. But I do say Keke Palmer. I could see playing either of the women because I do think Nella and Hazel are two sides of the same coin. I think that they could be played by someone like Keke Palmer. I also think Kiki Lane, who was in The Old Guard with Charlize Theron. It's a Netflix movie that I'm not sure if other people saw, but if you haven't, it's actually very good. Highly recommend checking it out. Kiki Lane, I think I could see as Nella. She's also in the new Coming to America, which I haven't seen yet. But and then let's see. I mean, I love Angela Bassett. I feel like I reference her a lot in the book. I don't remember at this point if I cut out a lot of those references, but I could see Angela Bassett playing either Kendra Ray or Diana. But the other thing I like to think like about doing, we're still in the early stages, so we haven't talked about casting just yet, but I do like the idea of having not unfound talent, but like people who are not household names yet, because I also think it could be fun firstly, of course, it would be fun to kind of start a career for someone. This book has jump-started so much for me, and I would love for the show to do the same for other young Black women, but I also think it would be cool for viewers to see new faces and not bring past roles to the show. Like, I think it would be a great way to just like really freshly show the story. So that's my thinking. Let's see, what else? What else do we have? Oh, thank you, Joy Bell Forgetto. I appreciate that. She said I'm gorgeous. Thank you. It is, I have to say, it's 6:25 a.m. here in Brooklyn right now, so I'm feeling anything but thank you. Andy Palmer, did you enjoy Such a Fun Age? Yes, I did. Wow, when did I read it? I feel like it came out right before the pandemic. And it's funny because that book came out, or my book was on submission kind of on the heels of that coming out, because my agent and I started to try to find a publisher in February 2020, which was, of course, right before the pandemic. Strange times last year. But yeah, I remember talking about Such a Fun Age a lot, and just the conversations that it really provokes. Like, I mean, there's so much. There's that awkward kind of sticky dynamic between the Black nanny and her white boss. There's just all of this tension that is kind of dripping behind the surface. And then, of course, like there's like a voyeuristic quality to the white woman in terms of like her nanny, her Black nanny, and like curiosity about her life as a Black woman. I think it's great. I really enjoyed that book. So highly recommend reading it. I feel like there's a lot to be gained from also both of our books, if I should be so bold. They speak to one another, I think. So, oh yes, Lupita Nyong'o, Elena Bowman. Yes, The Woman and Queen of Katwe, which I still haven't seen yet. It's terrible. My partner is a chess teacher, so I feel especially like I should have seen it. But yes, Lupita is just, she is a goddess. I think she's amazing. Yes, Bianca Kohler, Lester is so good. Lester is so good. Really another great book. And I had the pleasure of getting to do an event with Raven Leilani the week my book launched a few weeks ago on June 1st. So I think it actually even might be online. So just like if you wanted to look both of us up, highly recommend checking it out. I'm not sure if it's accessible in Australia, but Raven Leilani is wonderful. Lester is amazing. Also a young Black woman who is an editorial assistant, or she works in a publishing house. I don't think she's an editorial assistant, but there's also an interesting dynamic between her and an older white couple. So highly recommend checking out the book. It is very cringy. The character is problematic a lot of the times, but it's such a mood and so beautifully written. I can recommend it more. Let's see. Wendy Kendall, have really enjoyed you presenting this talk and your responses to the questions. You have a lovely warmth and enthusiasm with your replies. Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am so excited to get to talk to you all. Like I said at the beginning of this chat, I have always wanted to come to Australia. So hopefully when the world is a little safer, be able to make it out there. We only have a couple minutes left, it looks like. So if you have one more burning question, please go ahead and drop it into the comments. But for now, I'll say again, I'm Zakiya Dalila Harris, author of The Other Black Girl, and I can also be found on all of the social medias. So please find me on Twitter. I'm at Zakiya_Harris. Instagram, it's just my full name. And I'm also on Facebook. So if you read, go ahead and send me a message. Let me know what you think. Please follow me, and thank you so much. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. And let's see. Okay, just making sure there are no more questions coming in. Bianca, thank you. Yes, I hope I can come when festivals start again. Thank you so much for your kind words. Awesome. Yes. Well, all right. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up for real. Thank you so much, Better Reading, for having me. Thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful rest of the night, and take care. Bye, everyone.